asks the simple question, how do you know only authorized people can access sensitive data? The security team says, we have a policy. The engineer says, we enabled a setting. But nobody can show who owns the control, whether it operated all year, what exceptions occurred, or how failures were corrected. That gap is where governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, becomes practical. GRC connects business decisions, uncertainty, security controls, legal and contractual obligations, evidence, and independent review. It is not just paperwork, and compliance does not automatically mean security. In this video, we will use a fictional company called HarborPay to assess one risk, choose controls, collect synthetic evidence, and prepare for an audit. We will compare the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, NIST Risk Management Framework, NIST Control Catalogs, ISO-style management systems, and SOC-style attestations without pretending they are interchangeable. Strong beginner GRC explainers usually start with a business question, not a wall of acronyms. They reveal one relationship at a time: objective to risk, risk to control, control to evidence, evidence to finding, and finding to decision. Simple comparison tables keep frameworks from becoming alphabet soup. We will adapt those general teaching techniques only. The script, HarborPay example, diagrams, artwork, thumbnail, branding, and scene composition are original to CipherVibe. Here is the memorable analogy. GRC is a navigation system. Governance sets the destination, who may choose the route, and how much delay or danger the organization will tolerate. Risk describes storms, road closures, fuel limits, and the consequences of choosing badly. Compliance provides mandatory road rules. Controls are the brakes, lights, seat belts, and operating procedures. Evidence is the trip record. Audit independently checks whether the vehicle and records support the claims. A checklist without the destination may optimize the wrong journey. Governance establishes objectives, decision rights, roles, policies, risk appetite, escalation, and oversight. Senior leaders remain accountable for choosing priorities and accepting significant residual risk. Risk management identifies uncertainty that could affect objectives. Cyber risk is not only a technical flaw. It combines assets and business processes with threat events, vulnerabilities or conditions, likelihood, and impact. The output should help someone choose an action. Compliance determines which laws, regulations, contracts, standards, and internal policies apply, then demonstrates that obligations are met. An obligation may require a specific action, a security outcome, notification, retention, testing, or documentation. Controls translate decisions into repeatable safeguards. They may be administrative, technical, or physical, preventive, detective, or corrective. Evidence shows what was designed and what actually operated. Assurance and audit provide independent confidence. Internal assessment helps management improve. External certification or attestation has a defined scope, criteria, period, and assurance model. None of these elements should operate as an isolated spreadsheet. Start with scope and an objective. What service, data, process, or decision are we protecting, and why does it matter? Write a plausible risk scenario in plain language. A threat event exploits a weakness or condition, causing a business consequence. Record existing controls and evidence. Estimate likelihood and impact using defined criteria. Qualitative scales such as low, medium, and high can work if the organization defines them consistently. Quantitative estimates can support financial decisions when credible data and uncertainty ranges exist. Inherent risk is the exposure before considering relevant controls. Residual risk is what remains after controls and their demonstrated effectiveness. These terms are useful only when the assessment method states exactly how they are calculated. Common treatment options are avoid, mitigate, transfer, or share, and accept. Transfer does not remove operational accountability. Acceptance should name the authorized owner, rationale, duration, monitoring conditions, and review date. Risk assessment is not prediction with certainty. Document assumptions, data quality, disagreement, and confidence. Reassess when the business, threats, systems, controls, or obligations materially change. NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 organizes high-level outcomes under govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. It is useful for communicating current and target cybersecurity outcomes across organizations. NIST says the CSF does not prescribe exactly how outcomes must be achieved. The NIST Risk Management Framework provides a structured lifecycle: prepare, categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. It is detailed and closely associated with Federal Information System risk management, but its disciplined ideas can inform other programs. NIST SP 800-53 is a broad catalog of security and privacy controls. SP 800-53A supplies assessment procedures. A catalog is not a ready-made program. Controls must be selected, tailored, implemented, owned, and assessed for the actual scope. ISO/IEC 27001 defines requirements for an information security management system and supports accredited certification. SOC-2 is an attestation engagement performed against applicable trust services criteria for a defined system and period or point in time. Organizations often map one control to several obligations. Choose a primary operating model, then map requirements to it. Do not implement 5 duplicate controls because 5 frameworks describe similar outcomes. HarborPay is preparing a fictional customer portal using synthetic accounts and transactions. Its objective is to let customers manage payments while protecting account data and preventing unauthorized changes. The team records a risk scenario. An attacker obtains or guesses a customer's credential, accesses the portal, and changes a payment destination. Potential impact includes financial loss, customer harm, investigation cost, and reputational damage. Existing controls include strong authentication options, rate limits, session protection, change notifications, privileged access restrictions, transaction monitoring, and an incident process. HarborPay does not simply list them. Each control has an owner, implementation description, frequency, evidence source, exception process, and test method. Synthetic evidence includes configuration exports, access review approvals, alert samples, change tickets, incident exercise records, and logs with sensitive fields redacted. A control test finds that some dormant accounts missed the quarterly review. Management opens a finding, identifies the cause, assigns remediation, sets a due date, and evaluates whether temporary risk acceptance is justified. The audit trail now connects business objective to risk, control, evidence, test result, finding, remediation, and decision. Control design asks whether the safeguard, if operated as described, could reasonably address the stated risk or obligation. Operating effectiveness asks whether it actually ran for the required population and period, with exceptions detected and resolved. An annual access review policy may be designed poorly if the risk requires quarterly review. A correctly designed quarterly review may operate poorly if 2 systems were excluded or the reviewer approved without investigating unusual access. Evidence should identify the source, owner, period, population, method, and integrity. Screenshots can help, but automated reports, system records, approvals, tickets, and reproducible queries often provide stronger context. Validate that exported evidence is complete and accurate. Auditors commonly inspect documentation, interview personnel, observe procedures, reperform steps, and sample records. Sampling provides evidence about a population. It is not proof that every event was perfect. Protect evidence. Audit packages can contain architecture details, identities, vulnerabilities, logs, customer information, or secrets. Apply least privilege, secure transfer, retention limits, redaction, and a chain of custody appropriate to the engagement. Begin with scope, business services, legal entities, systems, data, locations, vendors, and time period. Build an obligation register with authoritative sources and accountable owners. Establish governance, objectives, risk appetite and tolerance, roles, committees, escalation, policy approval, and exception authority. Create current and target profiles or comparable outcome views. Maintain an asset and process inventory. Assess prioritized risk scenarios. Select and tailor a common control set. Assign every control an owner and define what evidence proves design and operation. Test controls on a risk-based schedule. Record findings consistently, condition, criteria, cause, consequence, owner, action, due date, and validation. Report decisions and trends to leaders, not only raw issue counts. Automate evidence collection where the source and logic are trustworthy. Preserve provenance, timestamps, access controls, and change history. Automation can make a wrong query repeat faster, so validate it. Review risks, obligations, controls, vendors, exceptions, and evidence when the environment changes. GRC becomes valuable when it shortens decision time and improves outcomes, not when it merely produces more forms. The first mistake is starting with a giant control spreadsheet before understanding objectives, scope, assets, obligations, or risk. The second is treating every framework as a separate implementation, creating duplicate controls and contradictory evidence requests. Other mistakes include subjective risk scores with undefined scales, multiplying ordinal labels as if they were precise mathematics, confusing vulnerability severity with business risk, calling a policy an operating control, selecting only favorable samples, allowing evidence owners to assess themselves without appropriate independence, accepting risk forever, and closing findings without validating the fix. Security risks exist inside GRC systems too. Evidence repositories concentrate sensitive data. Vendor questionnaires can reveal architecture. Audit exports may contain secrets or personal information. Protect access, encryption, retention, backups, integrations, and administrator actions. Do not fabricate evidence or rely on unverified AI-generated narratives. AI can help summarize, map, or draft, but accountable people must verify sources, scope, accuracy, and confidentiality. Finally, a clean audit opinion or certification is not proof that no breach can occur. It provides assurance within defined criteria, scope, procedures, period, and limitations. Here is the beginner checklist. Define the business objective and scope. Identify applicable obligations from authoritative sources. Establish decision rights, risk appetite, accountability, and escalation. Write meaningful risk scenarios. Assess likelihood, impact, existing controls, uncertainty, and residual risk using defined criteria. Choose to avoid, mitigate, transfer or share, or formally accept the remaining risk. Select one primary operating model. Use NIST CSF for high-level outcomes and communication, the RMF for a structured lifecycle, control catalogs for implementation depth, and certification or attestation when stakeholders require defined external assurance. Assign control owners. Test both design and operation. Preserve complete, accurate, protected evidence. Track findings through validated remediation. Monitor changes and report decisions, trends, and overdue risk, not only checkbox percentages. Remember the navigation system. Governance sets the destination, risk describes the hazards, compliance defines mandatory rules, controls support safe operation, evidence records the trip, and audit checks the claims. GRC succeeds when leaders can make better, timely, defensible decisions. Copyright 2026 CipherVibe. All rights reserved.